Unfortunately, even more video games have been delisted in the last year, for whatever reason too. Got some licensed music, don't have the rights to Nerf anymore, Games for Windows Live holding you down. Is it just kinda bad? Well, don't worry about that, just yoink it off a sale. Surely, no one's gonna wanna ever buy anything off the 3DS eShop or say Spec Ops The Line ever again. With the games industry leaning even heavier into the digital market with GameStops closing everywhere, Best Buy removing physical media from their stores, and half of the games not even getting a physical release, there's gonna be a whole legion of releases that'll totally disappear from consumers. Even though navigating it is a pain the day the PlayStation 3 store shuts down is gonna suck. So thankfully, we've got that emulation. You wanna play an old delisted crapshoot of a PlayStation 3 title again? I will play Afterburner Climax, whether Sega or the F-14D Super Tomcat license wants me to or not, and so should you. Last time around, I was real sad about Gundam Evolution on the verge of getting the axe right in the middle of its Zeta Core season, and this time in big 2025, we're hot on the heels of some major titles disappearing. Your Forza Horizon 4s, tons of Genesis and Dreamcast ports on PC, not to mention the entirety of Little Big Planet simply vanishing overnight. Then you've got entire new games coming out with a big ol' footnote stating something like Top Spin 2K25 will be going away in 2026, which I'm sure will really push sales there, guys. Virtua Tennis 4 better, also delisted. Other stuff's vanishing too. I don't know who out there is craving Dungeons & Dragons Dark Alliance, but y'all got a month and then it's gone forever. The game wasn't great, but that original trailer sure didn't help. So yo, it's Austin, and unfortunately, here's another bunch of delisted games you can't play anymore. Well, some of them sure, you just gotta know how to use an emulator, which I'm learning is becoming more and more of an issue. Y'all gotta go figure out how to tinker with RPCS3 already. Once again, we've got a whole slew of delisted games, both old and new to talk about, so buckle up. But before we get started, I've got a word from today's sponsor, and a good place to get some old physical games, Encore. You like video games? Of course you do, you're here. And when it comes to getting old collectibles from the most trustworthy sources, it's hard to beat Encore. With their app or website, you can scroll through all sorts of auctions and real sellers where collectors will talk to you about what it is they're selling. Some of which actually take the time to show off things actually working. I know. Encore is kind of like TikTok plus online auctions, but specializing in video game collectibles and other geeky things. So let's see what they got. Auctions are obviously the most popular things we see on here, but there's plenty of buy it now listings too. It's easy to bid, you just swipe to make it happen. You can set a max bid and it'll watch it for you. I found this great for looking for loose copies of retro stuff since everyone usually posts videos of their actual condition. Encore takes consumer trust seriously and requires ID verification for sellers. It also has the Encore guarantee to protect the buyer in case things don't come exactly as listed. So toss out all those generic stock photo auctions, no more. Encore also does a lot of giveaways on the app too, where they foot the bill for shipping, so feel free to see what they have to offer. And you can also get extra giveaway entries for bringing over friends. Just share the app and the chance of winning drastic go up.
The numbers don't lie!
So if you want to join the community and start winning auctions on video games and consoles, click the link down in the description to download Encore on iOS and Android today. Thanks to Encore for the sponsor, but for now, we got to dig around and get to gaming with D-lists. Let's not waste any more time. Today, I'm upset. There are a lot of really good video games that have just totally disappeared for whatever reason. Good and gone, but for real, where have all the Soul Caliburs gone? I find it pretty bonkers that just about every Soul Calibur has been yoinked offline and delisted. As many of y'all know, Soul Calibur was one of the first fighting games to put a strong emphasis on the guest character. 2 had Spawn, Heihachi, Link, 4 had Yoda and Darth Vader being platform exclusive, 5 had Ezio Auditore, and a whole bunch of characters nobody liked. So I guess it makes sense that these would all disappear from digital store shelves, although I'm not so sure why Bamco decided to take down the original back in 2022. A bit before the 360 store was sunset. This one doesn't even have guest characters, and it's probably one of the greatest fighters of all time, which now means that with the exception of 6 and 3, the latter of which didn't ever get a port, the entire Soul Calibur franchise has been delisted. That ain't right. I'd like to play 2 over most of the series any day, but I guess old Spawn's holding it back. We need to bring back Soul Cal. And speaking of games that were delisted for no real reason, Mercenaries 2 World in Flames just kind of disappeared, huh? I'm sure some of y'all remember this one. Late in the PlayStation 2 and Xbox lifespan, we'd see Pandemic Studios and LucasArts' Mercenaries Playground of Destruction. And this game was dope. Pick one of 3 characters, get yourself a near endless supply of weapons, vehicles, and objectives, and run around this open world
world blasting away baddies. A very simple game, but also one that was a good sandbox for any teenager back then. Come 2008, Pandemic Studios was acquired by Electronic Arts. They'd put out the 10 out of 10 Star Wars Battlefront 2, and then it was time for a sequel. Mercenaries 2 for the PC, PS3, 360, and PS2. This one wasn't as good, but still fun. In 2008, the idea of mercs was a little more outdated. For example, both the original Crackdown and Just Cause are very similar games. They're in massive open worlds with destructive playgrounds where you explore these settings, blow everything up that you can, and do a little GTA-style mission progression. However, both of those games released a year or two before Mercs 2, so going back to stiff movement and vehicles after you've been super jumping and parachuting from cars doesn't feel as good. Though it's hard to beat a little co-op. I like Mercs 2 quite a bit when it came out. Sure, a little disappointing for the times, but still a decent release with solid gameplay. Although they maybe shouldn't have used the next-gen footage to promote the PlayStation 2 version. Typical EA trickery.
You have got to be kidding me.
Anyways, this got taken down all the way in 2011 from the Xbox 360, and more recently, Origin pulled it in 2021, meaning the only way to play this version of Mercs 2 is to boot up a disc. You won't get to play the co-op anymore though, as they pulled that as well. Apparently, old download codes from Walmart.com don't even work now. EA just said no. There's no official reason as to why, but it's safe to assume licensed music and a lack of caring about a game from a studio they shuttered a year later. RIP Pandemic, some of your games were pretty good. Speaking of, next up we got Spec Ops The Line, aka allegedly the YouTube video essay game. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people know this one. Why is it here in the delisted games video? Yeah, this thing got taken down without any advance warning. January 29th, 2024, bam, it's gone. The next day, 2K put out a statement saying that licenses were expiring. We ain't re-upping that nonsense. Please buy other 2K games, and that was that. Most likely this was due to its heavy usage of licensed music, which seems to be a lot of these, huh? But Spec Ops getting the sack feels bad. I don't have too much to say about Spec Ops The Line that hasn't already been beaten into the ground already, but I do think it's a pretty solid 7th gen third-person shooter. One that said subtlety, opening with the picture of an upside-down American flag, Jimi Hendrix wailing out the Star-Spangled Banner, and setting the tone immediately. I enjoyed my time playing this. It's well made, very expensive looking, and was apparently a commercial failure, so now if you want to play it, you best hit up whatever fancy game download website or whip out a 20-year-old console, because it's gone. All in all, a pretty strong narrative-driven single-player experience from the time. And whenever you're done having complicated feelings about the nature of war, you can hop online and get some frags. I want to meet the people who only know this for its generic tacked-on deathmatch multiplayer, one the developers didn't even want to make. Who out there cracking skulls online on the line?
Team Deathmatch, go!
Thanks, 2K.
Well, that was dumb.
Forza Horizon 4. What are we doing, dude? I love me some Forza racing, specifically Horizon. I don't quite have the lifestyle that'll accommodate a full steering seat and chair getup. I probably never will, but I do love playing the latest Horizon and doing some insane nonsense with a car in between some cool cross-country racing. Anytime one of these comes out, I log like 120 hours into it, play as much as I can while it still holds onto my brainwaves, and then wait a few years for the next one. I actually still use the Horizon 5 Xbox controller as my primary. Those series controllers are the best ones out there, for real. However, anyone who has ever played a Forza game knows this. At some point, they will be delisted, without fail. So now the strategy has become buy Game Pass, play Forza when it's new, pick it up digitally a week before it gets perma-delisted on sale, rinse, repeat forever, which is not a good feeling. Especially because the chance we'll be getting physicals of this in the future gets lower and lower. The pain of being an Xbox exclusive. Well, Forza Horizon 4 has only very recently been taken away, December 16th, 2024, just a week before Christmas, and that's a shame. Horizon 4, taking place in the UK, had some really awesome DLC with their Lego collab, something I played a ton. Nothing like the Lego Speed Champions McLaren Senna. Uncanny Valley, baby. Unfortunately, my strategy was to just buy the season passes because I wasn't familiar with their game plan yet, so as it stood, I wasn't able to play Horizon 4 anymore, despite owning the DLC. So I actually have to thank key sellers for letting me hop back into this world with my gamer girl license plate. Horizon is goofy. I love playing them with their stupid collabs, their
player creator communities with dumb anime stickers, but it sure does feel bad knowing that it's gonna disappear sooner rather than later. You just know that 5's getting delisted in 2 or 3 years. That's not good. All of these games have been pretty solid, but one of the biggest tragedy delists has to be something I actually brought up briefly in the past. Keeping it with Microsoft, we all know, well, I guess it's been like 16 years. Some of us know Games for Windows Live. Well, just about every game sporting that got delisted from Steam. Even more of them had their servers shut down. A small handful of them had Games for Windows Live removed. It was Microsoft's way of incorporating DRM and Xbox Live onto Windows PC games. Nobody liked this thing, although I didn't mind the achievements. But it certainly didn't help anyone being able to play Virtua Tennis 4 again. Today, however, I gotta talk about Lost Planet 2, mostly because I found a workaround and was able to play it online again. And man, Capcom, y'all really need to bring this one back. Lost Planet was from a really interesting place in Capcom's legacy. It came out in the middle of the 7th generation, sported 3 completely different video games, and none of them were really huge hits. The second one was definitely their attempt to try and get Westerners into Monster Hunter, and well, it maybe worked on me a bit. As it currently stands, Lost Planet 2 is a game with a Steam page that simply says, "Hey gamers, that Games for Windows Live thing sure did suck. We'll fix this at some point." And it's been over 3 years without a peep, meaning that, in my opinion, the best Lost Planet title is inaccessible to play in its original state. Or so I thought. It turns out if you already had the game on Steam and didn't lose access to the Games for Windows Live account, you can do a whole bunch of downloading and trickery to make it work, and still play it online. That's right, the servers aren't gone. You can still play Lost Planet 2 on the internet, and surprising no one, it still holds the hell up. Lost Planet 2 is a game with a lot of meat. You're playing as a squad of dudes exploring the planet EDN3 and its harsh changing climate. But rather than being single player, you can run through the entire campaign with up to 3 friends, and it is a blast. It's got level design that'll take you and other players to completely different areas. Sometimes you'll be outside waging war with a giant beast, other times you'll be the person to run inside their stomach and blast them from the inside. You could tell they wanted to introduce the idea of hunting monsters to a Western audience with these crazy Resident Evil-ass pimple creatures, and it is an absolute joy the entire time. However, if you need to take a break, well, if you exit after a mission, you'll get a next episode stinger. Lost Planet 2 is filled with sauce, like a meaty bolognese. This game rules, but Capcom still hasn't done anything with its PC release since 2021. On top of that, the Xbox 360 store is now gone, and it never hit PS3 digital, so a box copy is the only way. And thankfully that's kind of cheap. Lost Planet 2 is a relic from the PlayStation 3 and 360 generation of consoles. It's got all the jank associated, the color schemes, the default controls for all methods are a freaking mess. What do you mean zoom in on PC is Z? Or up on the D-pad, what? The PC port is a PC port from the 2010s, so you know it sucks. It's absolutely not for everyone. But for those of you who have an appreciation for things like this, Phantasy Star Online, or any old 4-player co-op shooter, Lost Planet 2 is a banger. Hey Capcom, y'all got a lot of Games for Windows Live titles to bring back. Except Operation Raccoon City, y'all can keep that one. You know what I'd like to get though? One of the many Marvel related games from the last 30 years that have been buried into the ground. Some of them come back every now and then though, like X-Men Arcade. Konami's X-Men for the arcade is a game that should always be available, but today I learned that unless you want to spend several hundred, almost 1,000 on resale of the 1UP arcade port, it's been delisted on every platform for well over a decade now. Why? Originally popping out in arcades worldwide in '92, prime X-Men time, Konami's beat 'em up was famous for sporting up to 6 players, having this massive machine to play on, as well as a little... It's not overly complicated, there's a good hero and villain variety, the movesets are simple, and it's a fantastic quarter muncher with friends. It's also got a soundtrack where there's a dude saying X-Men. This would get a port over the PlayStation Network and Xbox Live Arcade in 2010, where it would sit for about 3 years before getting the axe, presumably due to Konami not wanting to re-up the licensing. This unfortunately happened a lot with their developer, Backbone Entertainment, who provided a lot of these ports for Konami with Simpsons, alongside other stuff that's gotten the D-list. However, I'm not so sure about the smoothing choices for X-Men being on by default. It looks a little uncanny. This port also lost a bit of charm as some of the dialogue was re-recorded, meaning that the classic "come to die" doesn't hit the same.
X-Men, welcome to die! X-Men, welcome to die!
But But still, the people deserve to play X-Men Arcade across all generations, and not everyone can afford the cost or space of a 1-up cab. Hopefully Disney and Marvel see the success of Marvel Rivals totally drenching all my social feeds, friend groups, and decide to bring this one back. Otherwise, emulation it is.
Dead! Kill you!
Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions. 4 Spider Dudes all working together years before Spider-Verse was written, those films were made, and before the idea became oversaturated and the norm. Heck, one of the writers on Shattered Dimensions would go on to be the guy who wrote the original Spider-Verse event in the comics, meaning Shattered Dimensions here was gonna be important. So important that Activision delisted it in 2014. Developer Beanox went really hard on this one. Despite only having the B-movie game and Monsters vs. Aliens under their belts, they pulled in an all-star panel of talent to try and get this one over. We've got several writers from different eras of Spidey. We've got a lot of fantastic voice actors playing each of the characters and villains. Remember when Neil Patrick Harris voiced Peter? Yeah, me either, but he does.
Let's get a good look at that gorgeous mug. Don't be so bashful.
Each of the 4 spiders has a totally different visual approach to their levels, and it's obvious any moment they're on screen. Normal Peter's got a slight cel-shaded approach. Miguel has the mother lode of futuristic bloom at all times. Noir is what you would expect along more stealth-oriented gameplay, and Ultimate Spider-Man said, 7th gen color schemes be gone, and gave us a look that resembled that older game. I love it. Gameplay-wise, I don't know how to say this, but you can tell there's been an additional 15 years of more Spider-Man titles since this released. Shattered Dimensions isn't an open world game, and that's to its credit. I love that they put the time and importance on making levels and characters feel like they're from that world. They all play differently. But the movement and feel out of Insomniac's games definitely trumps this one. Nowadays, Shattered Dimensions feels more like a solid action beat-em-up platformer with a couple stealth sections, and that's okay. You can tell they didn't think you'd be walking around that much though, and dude's got the virgin walk cycle. Shattered Dimensions has a ton of love poured into it, which was rare for a licensed game from this era. I never played it until this video project, and I can see why it found itself a bit of a cult following when it released. Heck, it was enough to garner its own sequel not even a year later, Edge of Time, which wasn't nearly as beloved. I'd love to get more into this and the non-movie Spider-Man games in the future, because this is just a whole world of things just gone due to Activision delisting everything. It actually popped back up on Steam for 2 years in 2015 after Acti had yoinked everything away, which brought hope, but in 2017, it was gone for good. There's been rumors of Microsoft wanting to bring these and some of those Transformers games back though, so I'll hold on to hope, or at least these ISO files. If you played this one, get ready for first-person Craven QTEs. This somehow looks better than the new movie.
Look at what you became.
And one last Marvel thing for the day, because I could go on forever and bore the entire planet. Marvel Heroes. Now, we did mention this briefly in a previous episode of Delisted Games, but only in the last year did a bunch of talented, game-crazed individuals go and find a way to bring it back to life with private servers. For those who don't know Marvel Heroes, it's an actual game and not just me describing a bunch of characters. 2013 brought us a free-to-play MMO Diablo clone style thing, featuring a freaking breadth of characters, and that game was great. It even got a console version in 2017, MORE Heroes Omega. It was doing okay, and then in 2017, Disney decided to end their relationship with the developer for legit reasons, meaning that game would be yoinked offline a single week after announcing closure. A shame, because it was a totally solid project made with a lot of love and a British rocket raccoon.
I have guns, ammo, and too much coffee. I'm ready.
How easily we forget.
Man, you ugly.
Despite being shut down, delisted, and removed from all of reality, in the last year it's become playable slowly over time, with builds improving its performance each patch. There's even an online server, Project Tahiti, that had like 50 some odd people playing at the same time in the middle of the day, so that tells me there's a demand for this, as there should be. Marvel Heroes was a lot of fun, and it had magic. Although some of her talents don't work, it's still in the early stages and there's a whole list of working and broken skills. The game itself does smell a bit like free-to-play early 2010 titles. There's a lot of numbers to look at with a ton of loot dropping, which can get overwhelming. You can see the monetization was in effect. I do love that you can pick both a character and a team-up friend, of which there's a ton. Seriously, you can scroll on this thing, even longer for the team-ups. Some of them might need a little fixing, but hey, they're doing all this for free, and it's a way to to play a game that I loved for a bit longer. It's nice having access to all the characters for free, and if anything, makes me want to see another game like this. Marvel Diablo clone is a great idea, as seen by Marvel Ultimate Alliance. Look, anything that lets me play as Daredevil in his Christmas outfit with candy canes is good by me.
Man, you ugly.
It ain't just Marvel though. As we all know, licensed games are usually the first up on the block to get chopped. Usually because a lot of publishers don't want to pay the licensing fees anymore. That, and for real, how long does anyone think that shovelware adjacent G.I. Joe Operation Blackout's gonna garner sales for?
The answer was not for long, as it was taken down at the end of 2024, which is crazy considering this was made by Game Mill Entertainment, who deal exclusively in licensed games. They had a few drop off in recent times: Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader, Monster Jam Battlegrounds, American Ninja Warrior Challenge, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2 years before the 3DS shop went kaputs, and more recently, Nerf Legends. All of these, not good. Y'all ever play Jumanji The Curse Returns? Yeah, there was a third Jumanji video game in the last few years. Well, too bad. There's no physical copies, just data floating around somewhere in space, maybe? Whoops. Well, I'll always be sad to see a video game become delisted and completely disappear no matter the quality. It sure does suck when it happens to something like Samurai Jack Battle Through Time. Yo, wait, this looks sick actually. Imagine, if you will, a 3D action combat game that isn't like Dark Souls, despite tons of reviewers saying it was. Samurai Jack Battle Through Time was a super interesting concept. They took the end of the series and decided to create this as an alternative take on the finale, yet it's still technically canon. And it's basically in the name, Battle Through Time. You're going through the greatest hits of Samurai Jack with an RPG-like character progression. Yeah, sure, it's a little Souls derivative, but hey, some concepts are just good ideas. It also shares DNA with the third birthday, because Jack loses more and more clothes as he gets hit. Except that game's awful, and this one's alright. Battle Through Time was developed by Soleil Incorporated, who you might know as the people behind Devil's Third and Wanted Dead. That's not a joke, that's real.
I'll have some more.
I'm glad they pulled off a decent one here. The menus look fantastic. The levels keep that Gendy Tartakovsky style, and this is about as good as a non-AAA licensed game could get. It's just a shame that it's been delisted alongside tons of Cartoon Network and Adult Swim related titles. If you go to Steam and click on Adult Swim games now, their list of offerings is basically nothing, all thanks to Warner Brothers Discovery. Yeah, they didn't just close animation studios and remove cartoons from Max, now they're bringing the axe to all sorts of games. That includes Samurai Jack, of course, alongside OKKO, Let's Play Heroes, multiple Steven Universe titles, Adventure Time, tons of others. They actually removed non-licensed stuff too, like Super House of Dead Ninjas, but thankfully they gave the rights back to those developers alongside a couple others, so something like Duck Game is safe. Yeah, this is all really stupid. There's still plenty of time to bring this and others back. They were only delisted like a month ago, and Samurai Jack is pretty good. Then we got something like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Danger of the Ooze. Yeah, I know, another day, another TMNT game on this channel, but this one is something I never played until last week. TMNT Danger of the Ooze was one of the last Activision releases right before Platinum did whatever they did with Mutants in Manhattan, and it was created by WayForward Technologies, the go-to studio for quality licensed games. This one, it's okay. Danger of the Ooze is actually canon to the 2012 TMNT show and takes place between seasons 2 and 3. I never watched any of the Nickelodeon adaptations, but a lot of people speak highly about it. This was a budget release popping out at $40 back in the day, and it's a slightly different take from the usual games. This here's a Metroidvania, an almost good one to boot. It starts out pretty slow, as these do, but most Metroidvanias become better defined once you get more movement options. Before long, you get a double jump, you're running around smacking things as all the turtles, and again, it's almost there. The combat is incredibly stiff. The options for traversal all have a weird jank to them. You can do a little dodge roll to go through enemies, but 9 out of 10 times you'll still get hit by their back. WayForward is usually pretty good at this, but I don't know if 3D is their strong suit. Danger of the Ooze is a little more glitchy than their usual romp. Case in point, this. Yep, that's a soft lock. And I didn't save for like 40 minutes, so that's a wrap. I want to like this game a whole lot more. The idea of a side-scrolling platforming TMNT title by WayForward is a good idea. You can tell they're a bunch of nerds too. The title screen's a take on that NES title by Konami. Unfortunately, I think I'd rather play that. It's at the very least CBT memorable.
The first step is to distract them with pepperoni! Look at the size of this!
Mikey! Pay attention!
You know how this story goes. Activision, blah, 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 it's all gone. Kind of like the next one on the docket, Transformers Rise of Darkspark. What happens when you take High Moon Studios, toss them into the Destiny Call of Duty vortex, and then ask the creators of Sega's The Incredible Hulk to do the job? Well, you get Edge of Reality's Transformers Rise of the Darkspark, a game that feels more like a lackluster level pack. All right, hold on to your butts, this is complicated. Rise of the Darkspark is on the same engine as the War and Fall of Cybertron games. It's actually a sequel. It's also simultaneously a spin-off and crossover of the live-action Michael Bay films, specifically an alternate for the one with the laminated Romeo and Juliet laws card. Seriously, what the f? This game ends up attempting to, maybe tie a bridge between the films and those games, but also by using multiverse shenanigans with the Darkspark to bring them all together. This includes another High Moon release, Transformers Dark of the Moon, which was an original story and not following that movie, which ended up spinning off into Darkspark. And it's not important. It's really not. No one cares. What is important is that this was yet another attempt at a cool Transformers game in an engine I adore, but it truly failed to capture the same spirit. Looking at the gameplay, yeah, sure, it looks like War and Fall of Cybertron, but they really didn't know how to put the levels together in a way that felt as good. The narrative elements just aren't there, the AI's doing whatever this is. Yo, Bumblebee, you all right? I just don't think it's anywhere near as memorable or impactful as the previous games, and it seems like a majority of critics felt similarly, with each version hovering around the 30 to 40 zone on Metacritic. It's not necessarily bad, but it ain't great either. It's way shorter than those first two, and like 3.5 hours. The stages are very spacious, like too spacious. You don't even get to play as the cool Transformers until later in the campaign. It just don't hit the same. The co-op multiplayer mode, Escalation, was allegedly fun to play, but that's been long since shut down now, so all we got is a middling campaign with a confusing story and two much better games staring at you directly in the face. Also, check out this air dash. Floaty.
So far, we've gone into great games, licensed games, a whole bunch of Marvel stuff, which leaves us with some of the more notorious stuff, or maybe just a lot of stuff. Things, a lot of games. It's always sad when a game gets delisted, even if it sucks and there's not much to say about it. There's a lot of these though, and even if I think you're a total disgrace to your franchise, it's probably still worth bringing it up. Meaning, no matter the quality, it's time for a little rapid fire, starting with Ace Combat Assault Horizon.
This ain't your granddad's Ace Combat, we got QTEs. Ace Combat Assault Horizon is everything that was wrong with the PlayStation 3 era of video games in a single package. The decolorization, the homogenization of mechanics, and a desperate attempt for Japanese studios to appeal to Westerners. I'm talking regenerating health. Yes, regenerating health in Ace Combat. When I think of fast-paced aerial dogfights in this long-running, story-driven franchise, I think oil splatters in the camera and forgettable characters are just what it needed. I missed this when it released originally, but you can really see the Call of Duty-fication from this era. It's all over the place. It's got this bizarre snap zoom minigame. Anytime you get close to another plane, well, they'll start jerking all over the place as you try to make the crosshairs meet. It feels unnatural, which is bizarre in a series that features flying up a space elevator. Assault Horizon was initially met with mixed reception that's grown way more critical over time, especially with the release of Ace Combat 7, which is seen as a banger. This was delisted in 2017 on consoles and 2018 from PC without much fanfare, likely due to aircraft manufacturer licensing, and that'd be that. Wildly, you can still buy a key on resale for a relatively normal price, meaning there's not much demand for it, and that makes sense considering its technical issues on modern systems. I wanted to crash and burn before closing it, and then it froze on me. Well, Assault Horizon ain't great. Bandai Namco is no stranger to the D-list dimension. Besides Assault Horizon, we've got Gundam Evolution now that is shut down, the PlayStation 3 version of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure All-Star Battle, and the jump game prior to Jump Force J-Star Victory Versus. None of these are great, but being wrapped up in that licensing dimension has these disappearing without much notice. However, I'm not so sure why Bamco decided to yoink down a ton of RPGs this year, starting with Ray Gigant in March 2024 stating contractual agreements ports into every PlayStation 3 release of the Tales of series. We now know that Grace's F was getting a remake, Zestiria still has a PlayStation 4 and Steam port, but now Xillia 1 and 2 are gone without a word. I'm not sure why, considering Namco actually owns the rights to the franchise, but it is what it is. As long as Vesperia is still around, we're good. You know who loves the D-list stuff for no reason? Sega. Recently they removed a metric butt ton of their classic Genesis and Dreamcast games from all digital stores, presumably in prep for yet another collection, but still, December 6th rolled around and suddenly 60 different games from those collections were gone. That included Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 in Germany and Italy, by the way. The people deserve to play Phantasy Star 2 and 4. Look, all I'm saying is if you take away the ability for new generations to buy Sega Bass Fishing, you messed up.
This one's huge.
Not to mention that with the release of Sonic X Shadow Generations, Sega actually went and delisted the original release of Generations. Granted, it's outdated with this new one, but still, if you want to play that original, you gotta buy it in a giant collection now. Summon Night 6 Lost Borders was brought over by Gaijin Works in 2016, but was quietly delisted in 2022, presumably due to the publisher going quiet. Both The Suffering and its sequel, Ties That Bind, were delisted from Good Old Games in September, because David Zaslav hates his company having good PR, which sucks because both of those games are pretty solid too. How about a bad port of a good game? Payday 2 on the Switch. First off, yes, this came out on the Switch, and it sure looks like it. Starbreeze decided that keeping this version up to date with the PC one wasn't worth it, and I don't blame them. I just didn't think they'd take it down 6 full years later. Lastly, and something we've briefly talked about before, Dungeons & Dragons Dark Alliance sure was a disappointment. The games that inspired it, Baldur's Gate, Dark Alliance 1 and 2, are bona fide classics, have decent ports, and anyone can pick this up and play them. They're great. This spiritual successor took that concept through the most generic games as a service style progression with slow gear score increasing like Destiny, but sucked out all the soul to give us something with a 50 on Metacritic, and even lower user score. Nobody was happy with this thing, especially not after the bizarre marketing they had. You know what'll sell a D&D game? GoPro camera-ass pre-rendered cutscenes and a celebrity reel of people dying constantly. Though, I love Athena, she rules.
We got him.
Come on,
He's gone.
come on.
We don't want any dessert.
COVID-era advertising, let's go. The final product isn't great. I threw it under my worst games of 2021, and it seems like a lot of people agreed. Not just for the glitchiness and lack of depth, but also for failing to live up to its namesake. Thankfully, Baldur's Gate 3 was just around the corner to bring D&D games back into the limelight for now. Well, Dark Alliance is actually just about to get delisted. Wizards of the Coast is shutting down the servers, which will render most of the content unplayable outside of single player, so on February 24th, it'll all be gone. I'd say pick this one up before it disappears, but I mean, you don't gotta.
Great.
We've talked about a lot of delisted games today. Some good, others Ace Combat Assault Horizon. But there's one more I want to talk about, and unfortunately, it's a huge bummer. Last year, there was a major game delisted that is, frankly, an absolute tragedy. Simply put, every Little Big Planet being delisted is a major blow to video games, both as an entertainment medium and an art form. I'm not kidding.
And no, I'm not exaggerating. Little Big Planet probably doesn't need an introduction. It's one of Sony and Media Molecule's premier franchises from the 7th generation. You play a sack boy, a little dude, and you run through levels doing standard platforming action. You collect little orbs to unlock costumes and stickers. It's pleasant. Little Big Planet is a family-oriented game for people of all ages, but that's not the major thing here. The whole philosophy with LBP and its sequels was that the players, the community, would be in charge of, well, the game. Touting itself as a world of infinite possibilities, Media Molecule set out to give the players a level creation tool where you could really do anything. And I think they did a pretty good job for a console made in 2006. Sure, there was a single player campaign with things to collect, music to vibe to, and puzzles to solve, but the main thing was logging on and playing whatever hotness people had made recently. And some of these were wild. It's the same as like kids that are so fascinated with Roblox and Fortnite. You can incorporate anything into these games. You've got levels recreating creepypasta like Pokemon and escaping Lavender Town. Heck, people would go and recreate Dead Space, Angry Birds, and it only got more complicated with the sequels. Suddenly you have people making Zelda dungeons inside of Little Big Planet 2. How? I have no idea, but I appreciate this crazy amount of effort. Like, dude, why am I suddenly playing Woodman stage from Mega Man? This is dope. The music too.
Media Molecule handled the first two, while Sumo Digital took charge of the third one, and all three were regarded positively and had big, healthy communities making levels for several years. Media Molecule went on to make Dreams, which is capable of some truly bonker game design, but unfortunately, things weren't so positive for Little Big Planet. There seems to be a bit of speculation as to why for the first two entries, but Little Big Planet 1 was delisted in November 2019, while the sequel was taken down January 2021. Sony never officially commented on why, but it's fair play to guess that the sheer amount of licensed content and the purchasable DLC and community levels that were being made would be a cause. More recently, Little Big Planet 3, which actually had a presence on the PlayStation 4, was taken down on October 31st, 2024, nearly a decade after its original release. But this was after a whole bunch of nonsense. In 2021, the server started getting DDoSed and users were posting hateful messages online. Sony temporarily shut down the servers and never brought the PlayStation 3 ones back. Then, in January of 2024, someone created a mod that caused people to get banned on PlayStation Network. There was a continual barrage of hate speech and nonsense, which eventually caused Sony to make the decision to take it all down in April of 2024. Finally, October rolls around, it gets delisted, and all the DLC's gone too, which included several licensed stuff with SpongeBob, Final Fantasy, and at least 10 million user-created levels made over 15 years in 3 games. The backlash on this was loud, to say the least. That's countless hours of work, love, and community just gone in an instant, and for no real good reason. Sony made seemingly no attempt to moderate these things, likely because it wasn't generating them constant money, and there's no actual way for people to back up all this user-made content, so just like Mod Nation Racers, it was all gone in an instant. You can still pick up all the Little Big Planets, physical copies don't run for too much these days, but you'll be playing a completely butchered experience. Half of the menus are crossed out, and what remains are a couple of 3 to 5 hour long campaigns and a promise of something greater that no longer exists. Actually, the only Little Big Planet thing that exists on online stores is currently Sackboy: A Big Adventure, and while that game is okay, it just shows how much this sucks. The idea of a video game being temporary, or at this point, an entire franchise, is not the type of future I want for this medium. Sony should go back on this one and release a new version of Little Big Planet and find a way to restore what once was, because this massive loss of community is a huge bummer. So instead of just being down about it, I want to hear in the comments about levels that y'all made, or even skins, like how I made Rei Ayanami in Mod Nation on the first day that got downloaded like 10,000 times. She may be gone, but at least my trophy isn't. Hey Sony, let's fix this. Make a new game that has all the levels. If you do, I'll buy a PS5 Pro. I don't want to, but I will.
Oh, I wish I could, but I don't want to.
So there you have it, a depressing end to yet another batch of delisted video games you can't get anymore. This video actually leaned into positive stuff for a change, so if you were expecting a bunch of jump forces like last time, I'm sorry. I'm sure there will be more. Instead, we just get to be bummed out by Lost Planet 2. Seriously, bring it back. Are there any other delisted games I should check out? More stuff on the horizon? Let me know down in the comments and I'll check them out in the future. If you liked today's video, check out the sponsor or head on over to the Patreon to support the channel directly. Buy a t-shirt over at the Pixel Empire and do the things that you do to help the channels you like do decent. Anywho, with that, I'm out. I've been Austin. Catch you guys next time when we do the squad thing for real. There was way too much content.
Thank you all so much for watching. Special Patreon shout out to Alfred Correa, Benna Oswald, Blackfoot Ferret, Blake Thomas, Charles Rosner, Cheeks, Clerk Fox, Chris Shelton, DX Buster, Dylan Snyder, Fragile Traveler, Hey Quiggles, Idlevice, Jay Roos, Jacoby Fitzpatrick, Kevin Zanowski, Pierre, Platinum Rose, Pacha Bear, Rare Find It, Ryan Talbert, and Vox. Thank you all so much for your generous support. And hey, it's the first video of the year. It took me long enough. Got a bunch of stuff coming up for 2025 that I'm pretty excited about. I hope you are too. You can tell that this video was delayed a little bit due to a couple of inaccuracies, but please don't yell at me in the comments, or do. That's fine. What are you doing this year? It's already March. What am I saying? Okay, bye.